A man with no backup cannot build wealth like a man who can afford rescue. If one emergency can erase your progress, motivation is not your first problem. Exposure is. You are not poor only because you lack money. You are fragile because your life has too few control points. No cash buffer, no marketable skill, no visible proof, no surplus, no assets. No way to leave when a job, a person, or a system starts owning you. And this is where most men lie to themselves. They think hard work will save them. It will not. Hard work without strategy only makes you useful to someone else's machine. But the opposite trap is just as dangerous. Gambling, flexing, calling chaos ambition, taking risks you cannot survive, spending money you have not earned twice, copying men who have family money, inherited networks, social rescue, or people waiting to catch them when they fall. A man with no backup does not have the luxury of romantic stupidity. He cannot build from fantasy. He has to build from exposure. Jan Koum understood this before WhatsApp became a $19 billion acquisition. He came to America from Ukraine as a teenager. His family lived on welfare and collected food stamps near the building that later housed WhatsApp. Years later, the world saw the sale. But the sale was not the first proof. The first proof was the product. A simple, reliable messaging app built around privacy, no ads, and user trust. Pressure, poverty, immigration, no inherited safety net. Action. Build a useful product. First proof. Users kept coming back. Power lesson. When no one gives you status, build utility so strong the market is forced to notice. That is the law of the unsupported man. You do not win by being believed. You win by becoming measurable. And here is the question most men never ask. What makes a man financially dangerous? Not rich-looking, not loud, not lucky. Dangerous. A financially dangerous man is hard to trap. He can survive pressure. He can refuse bad deals. He can leave disrespect. He can wait longer than desperate men. He can negotiate because he is not negotiating from hunger. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. In The Prince, he wrote that the man who relies least on fortune is established the strongest. That is not motivational poetry. That is survival architecture. The man who relies on fortune must keep begging luck to behave. The man who relies on rescue must keep pleasing the rescuer. The man who relies on one paycheck must swallow disrespect when that paycheck becomes threatened. The man who relies on approval must keep explaining himself to people who do not control his future. But the man who builds control points becomes harder to command. Cash gives him time. Skill gives him earning power. Proof gives him visibility. Surplus gives him options. Investing gives him patience. Ownership gives him leverage. And leverage gives him the one thing fragile men do not have: room to choose. In 2025, FINRA reported that only 46% of United States adults said they had enough money set aside to cover 3 months of living expenses in an emergency. That was down from 53% in 2021. Do not hear that as a statistic. Hear it as exposure. That is millions of people one crisis away from obedience. One medical bill, one job cut, one family emergency, one rent increase, one bad month. One weak decision made under pressure because there was no buffer between survival and collapse. The unsupported man cannot afford to be casual with risk. He has no backup. So he must become his own backup. If you do not understand this, you will confuse motion with progress for the next 10 years. You will work hard, but your money will disappear. You will earn more, but your lifestyle will expand. You will learn random skills, but no one will pay you for them. You will talk about ambition, but have no proof. You will stay in jobs where your employer owns your calendar, your energy, your confidence, and your fear. And the worst part is that you will call it patience. But patience without structure is just delay wearing a noble mask. The world does not care that you had no help. The landlord does not care. The market does not care. The recruiter does not care. The emergency room does not care. Your bank account does not care. Power begins when you stop demanding emotional fairness from systems that only respond to leverage. This is not a video about becoming rich to impress people. That is the shallow game. This is about building enough structure that life cannot break you with one event. Enough skill that one employer cannot define your value. Enough proof that your ability cannot remain invisible. Enough surplus that every raise does not become another leash. Enough assets that your future does not depend entirely on selling the same hour again and again. Wealth is not escape first, it is structure first. The unsupported man builds differently. He protects the base, he raises his market value, he builds proof, he expands income, he controls surplus, he invests with discipline, he builds owned leverage. Protect, earn, save, prove, invest, own, scale. 7 laws. No romance, no chaos, no fake empire talk, just control. Law 1. Protect the base. Before you build wealth, stop being easy to destroy. Your first job is not to look successful. Your first job is to survive pressure without collapsing. Most men do this backward. They want the symbol before the structure. They want the better apartment, the sharper clothes, the upgraded phone, the restaurant photos, the car payment, the visible sign that life has changed. But if one emergency can push you back into panic, nothing has changed. You only decorated fragility. The first wealth move of a man with no backup is defense. Defense is not weakness. Defense is what allows aggression later. A man who cannot absorb impact cannot take strategic risk. He cannot leave a bad boss. He cannot negotiate calmly. He cannot say no to a disrespectful client. He cannot wait for a better opportunity. He cannot protect his energy. He cannot think clearly when pressure comes. He is always one unexpected expense away from surrender. So you need to know your survival number, not your dream number, not your luxury number, not the number you tell people to sound ambitious, your survival number. How much does it cost to keep your life operating for 1 month? Rent, food, transport, utilities, debt payments, insurance, basic tools, the minimum cost of staying operational, nothing decorative, nothing emotional, nothing designed to impress people who would not rescue you anyway. Write that number down. Most men avoid this because the number exposes them. It kills fantasy. It shows exactly how fragile they are. It turns vague anxiety into visible truth. Good. A man cannot fortify what he refuses to measure. Once you know the number, build your first wall. Emergency cash. Not because cash makes you rich, because cash gives you time. And time under pressure is power. A man with no cash must accept faster. He accepts the job that shrinks him. He accepts the client who disrespects him. He accepts the manager who drains him. He accepts the favor that humiliates him. He accepts the relationship where he is tolerated, not respected. Why? Because he has no room to maneuver. Machiavelli warned that the arms of others weigh you down or bind you fast. Modern translation. If your survival depends entirely on someone else's paycheck, approval, patience, or rescue, you are not free, you are rented. This is why the unsupported man must lower fixed expenses before trying to look powerful. A high fixed life is a beautiful cage. The more your monthly life requires, the more people can pressure you. The bigger your bills, the faster you must obey. The more emotional spending you normalize, the less oxygen you have when opportunity appears. Most men do not lose because they lack ambition. They lose because their base leaks. Subscriptions they forgot. Debt they refuse to face. Food spending they do not track. Impulse purchases that feel small but behave like termites. Rent chosen for identity instead of strategy. Tools bought before there is output. Courses bought before there is execution. The money does not disappear at once, it bleeds. And a bleeding base cannot support expansion. Protect the base. Know your debt. Know your fixed costs. Build emergency cash. Remove useless monthly leaks. Ensure what could destroy you where relevant. Keep your life lighter than your ego wants it to be. This is not about living small forever. It is about refusing to let your present appetite assassinate your future options. Howard Schultz saw this early. Before Starbucks became a global machine, Schultz grew up in public housing in Brooklyn. His father was injured at work with no health insurance, no workers' compensation, and no financial protection. Schultz later described that moment as seeing his family's hope collapse. One accident, one working-class family, no financial protection, hope broken by exposure. That is the lesson. Poverty is not only low income, poverty is being unable to absorb impact. It is living so close to the edge that one event becomes a command from the world. Schultz did not build Starbucks by asking people to understand his childhood pain. He turned the wound into a system. Stores, brand, customer experience, employee benefits, expansion, repetition. He did not invent coffee. He reframed coffee into an experience people would pay more for. Power lesson. Wealth is not always created by inventing a new object. Sometimes it is created by controlling perception, distribution, and experience. That is Machiavellian wealth. Not fantasy, not motivation, structure. And that is what the unsupported man must learn. Your pain is not proof. Your proof is proof. Your loneliness is not leverage. Your output is leverage. Your ambition is not valuable until it becomes visible, useful, and hard to replace. Machiavelli wrote, "One judges by the result." Cold, brutal, accurate. People may say they care about effort. They may say they respect potential. They may say they believe in you. But the world updates its judgment when evidence changes the cost of ignoring you. So, after you protect the base, the next question is not, how do I feel more confident? The next question is colder. What can I do that the market is already willing to pay for? Law 2. Raise market value. Once the base is protected, you need earning power. Not vague self-improvement. Not motivational identity. Not collecting ideas from videos and calling it growth. Market value. A man with no backup cannot afford random improvement. He needs improvement that converts into income, alternatives, bargaining power, and proof. Pick one skill that connects directly to money. Sales, copywriting, coding, design, video editing, paid ads, artificial intelligence automation, operations, data analysis, finance, negotiation, project management, business development. But do not choose a skill because it sounds impressive. Choose it because the market already pays for it. The unsupported man must be practical before he is passionate. Passion without demand becomes expensive self-expression. Skill with demand becomes a weapon. This is where many ambitious men remain trapped. They confuse being interested with being valuable. They consume. They research. They jump from subject to subject. They say they are becoming well-rounded, but really they are avoiding the humiliation of being a beginner in one specific arena. Scattered potential protects the ego. Concentrated competence builds power. Do not collect skills like decorations. Pick one. Give it 90 days of serious attention. Study it, practice it, build with it. Use it to solve real problems. Ask yourself this: which skill would make a company lose money if they ignored me? Which skill would make a client pay attention? Which skill would produce visible before and after proof? Which skill would allow me to create value outside my current dependency? That is the test. A man with no backup does not ask, what sounds interesting? He asks, what increases my leverage? If you are the man building without rescue, stop confusing consumption with progress. You already know discipline matters, but your problem is not information. Your problem is execution without a private system. If you keep collecting advice without turning it into proof, you will stay educated and trapped. Inside Patreon, you get deeper, unfiltered lessons, operating frameworks, and direct doctrines for building discipline, leverage, and self-command, so you can become harder to control. This is not for men who want comfort. It is for men who want to become their own backup. The decision is yours. Now understand the second trap. Skill alone is not enough. A hidden skill is treated like a non-existent skill. This is where many men become bitter. They say, I know I am good. Maybe. But does the market know? Does your employer know? Do clients know? Do clients know? Can someone see the evidence without listening to your explanation? This matters because the world does not pay for your private identity. It pays for visible value. It rewards signals. It responds to proof. It trusts what can be demonstrated, measured, compared, repeated, and distributed. You may be underestimated. You may also be unproven. Stop confusing the two. Law 3. Build proof in public or portfolio. Skill hidden in private is treated as non-existent. This is where most men fail. They learn quietly. They improve quietly. They struggle quietly. Then they wonder why no one sees them, because nothing has been made visible. The market cannot reward invisible value. Your family cannot respect invisible progress. Employers cannot negotiate with invisible ability. Clients cannot buy invisible competence. So, build proof. Every week. A case study. A before and after. A sample project. A dashboard. A client result. A short breakdown. A public thread. A portfolio page. A landing page. A recorded walkthrough. A measurable improvement. Do not ask to be believed. Show receipts. This is not arrogance, it is protection. Proof protects you from being trapped inside other people's outdated opinions. Your family may still see the old version of you. Your friends may still rank you according to the past. Your employer may still treat you like replaceable labor. But visible proof forces the world to update. Not emotionally, economically. The world does not need to like you to respond to evidence. John D. Rockefeller became powerful because he did not merely participate in oil. He controlled more of the system around oil. PBS documents how Standard Oil built or owned barrel-making facilities, timber and drying facilities, wagons, warehouses, boats, tank cars, and later pipelines. They cut barrel costs dramatically and turned chaos into vertical control. Pressure. A chaotic industry full of waste and price wars. Action. Control the chain. First proof. Lower costs and larger, better planned refineries. Power lesson. The man who controls more of the system becomes harder to compete against. Now apply this personally. If you are a freelancer, do not just perform tasks. Control the offer. Control the proof. Control the client acquisition. Control the case study. Control the follow-up. Control the reputation. If you are an employee, do not just work hard. Control the metrics. Control the visibility. Control the documentation. Control the conversation around your contribution. If you are building online, do not just consume and think. Control the output. Control the archive of evidence. Control the public record of your competence. Because proof is not only for the market, proof is also for your own nervous system. A man with no results is easy to shake. Every doubt enters him. Every criticism feels like a verdict. Every slow month makes him question his identity. Every person who does not believe in him becomes a mirror he fears. But proof changes that. When you have proof, you do not need to scream. You do not need to beg. You do not need to explain for 3 hours. You point to the evidence. This is what I built. This is what improved. This is what changed. This is what the numbers show. This is what the client said. This is what the market did. This is what I can repeat. That is the transition from potential to leverage. Potential says, believe me. Proof says, look. And the unsupported man cannot afford to live in the territory of believe me. That territory belongs to men with safety nets. If they are wrong, someone catches them. If you are wrong, life charges interest. So build proof before you ask for opportunity. Build proof before you demand respect. Build proof before you announce a new identity. Build proof before you call yourself serious. Because until your ambition becomes visible, useful, and measurable, the world has no reason to rearrange itself around your self-image. But once proof exists, a colder test begins. Can you turn evidence into income? Because many men build quietly, prove quietly, improve quietly, and still remain poor for one reason. They never bring their proof to a person with money, authority, or opportunity. They hide behind preparation. They call fear patience. They call avoidance humility. They call silence discipline. But if your proof never enters the market, it cannot become power. Law form. Create income expansion. Proof is not the finish line. Proof is the weapon you bring to the negotiation. This is where weak men hide. They say they are building, but they never ask, they never pitch, they never negotiate, they never apply, they never sell. They never present the proof to anyone with money or authority. Why? Because rejection would expose whether the proof is real, and that is exactly why you must do it. A man who refuses the market is not disciplined. He is protected by fantasy. As long as he stays private, he can imagine himself valuable. As long as he never asks, he never has to hear no. As long as he never sells, he can pretend the world is unfair without testing whether his offer is sharp enough to deserve attention. But wealth is not built inside your imagination. It is built where value meets pressure. The unsupported man must learn to present value without begging, negotiate without apology, and receive rejection without collapsing. Rejection is not always humiliation. Sometimes rejection is intelligence. It tells you the offer is unclear, the proof is weak, the market is wrong, the timing is wrong. The buyer does not feel the pain strongly enough. The result is not specific enough. The risk has not been reduced enough. Only fragile men treat every no as a verdict on their identity. Strategic men treat no as market data. If you are an employee, use proof to ask for the raise with documented results, not emotion, not loyalty, not how hard it has been. Results. Show what improved, show what you handled, show what you saved, show what you created, show what would become more expensive if you left. If they refuse, that is information. Maybe the company cannot pay. Maybe they do not value the role. Maybe your contribution is not visible enough. Maybe you need a better market. Maybe you need a stronger portfolio. But now you are not guessing, you are reading reality. If you want a better job, do not enter the market as a man asking to be saved. Enter as a man carrying proof. A stronger portfolio. Clear outcomes. Concrete metrics. Projects. Before and after evidence. A record of useful work. If you want to freelance, do not say, "I can help with anything." That is not an offer. That is desperation wearing flexibility. Say what problem you solve, for whom, and what result you create. One offer, one customer type, one pain, one result. A man with no backup cannot afford vague positioning. Vague men are easy to ignore. Specific men are easier to hire. If you want to consult, choose a problem that has a cost. A problem that wastes time, loses money, creates confusion, blocks growth, damages reputation, drains operations, slows sales, reduces retention. People pay faster when the pain is expensive. Income expansion is deliberate. Ask for the raise. Move to a better job. Freelance with a clear offer. Consult using a specific problem. Sell a lean service. Build a small paid product. Do not try to look like a founder before you have earned the first independent dollar. The goal is not theater. The goal is escape power in its earliest form. The first independent dollar changes a man. Not because $1 makes him rich, because it breaks the illusion that his survival must come from one system. It tells him, "I can create value somewhere else." That sentence matters. A man who believes he has only one source of income walks differently. He talks differently. He negotiates differently. He tolerates more. He fears more. He delays more. He over-explains more. But once he has proof that money can come from outside his current dependency, his nervous system changes. He does not become arrogant. He becomes less trapped. This is the beginning of financial danger. Not rebellion, not quitting tomorrow, not burning bridges for applause. Evidence. But there is a hidden test after income rises. Because more money does not automatically create freedom, sometimes more money only gives a fragile man a larger cage. Law 5. Control the surplus. More income does not make a man free if his appetite expands faster than his discipline. This is why raises disappear. This is why men earn more and stay broke. This is why the broke man's first enemy is not always poverty. It is emotional spending after pressure. He suffers, he waits, he feels ignored, he watches other people live easier lives. He finally earns more. Then the wounded version of him takes control. New clothes, new phone, better dinners, subscriptions, a better apartment, a car payment. Small luxuries presented as healing. Lifestyle upgrades disguised as confidence. Purchases designed to prove he is no longer small. But the market does not care that the purchase made you feel powerful for one weekend. The bank account knows the truth. That was not wealth. That was revenge consumption. Revenge consumption is when a man spends to punish the memory of being broke. He is not buying the object, he is buying a temporary identity. He is saying, "Look at me now," to people who are not even watching. That is why it is dangerous. Because emotional spending feels like victory while quietly returning you to dependence. The unsupported man must understand this with absolute seriousness. Your first raise does not belong to your ego. Your first raise belongs to your structure. Every new dollar needs a job, debt reduction, emergency fund, investment account, skill development, business tool, portfolio asset, sales system, distribution. Do not let your money wander. A wandering dollar becomes someone else's asset, someone else's profit, someone else's margin, someone else's leverage. You worked for it. Then they owned it. The unsupported man must become the commander of surplus, not because he hates pleasure, because he knows premature pleasure is how fragile men stay owned. You can enjoy life. But enjoyment must never become the excuse that destroys your exit power. The question is not whether you can afford the purchase. The question is whether the purchase weakens your position. Does it increase fixed pressure? Does it reduce your cash buffer? Does it delay your investment plan? Does it make you more dependent on the current job? Does it give you status now but remove options later? Does it impress people who would not protect you if things went wrong? Ask colder questions. Most men ask, "Can I buy this?" The unsupported man asks, "What does this purchase make me easier or harder to control?" That is the real test. When you control surplus, income becomes structure. When you lose surplus, income becomes entertainment for the marketplace. This is why two men can earn the same amount and live in different realities. One earns, spends, reacts, upgrades, and remains fragile. The other earns, assigns, protects, invests, builds, and becomes harder to corner. Same income, different command. The difference is not money. The difference is discipline over money. And discipline over money becomes discipline over time. Because cash is stored time, surplus is stored choice, assets are stored leverage. This is where wealth starts becoming psychological before it becomes visible. You stop needing every opportunity to work immediately. You stop panicking when one person withdraws approval. You stop accepting disrespect because rent is hunting you. You stop chasing fast wins because slow structure is now protecting you. You begin to understand why desperate men are easy to lead. Not because they are stupid, because pressure shortens their thinking. A hungry man negotiates against himself. A man with surplus can wait, and waiting is a form of power. But saving alone is not the end. Cash protects you from collapse. It does not create long-term expansion by itself. The next question is whether your discipline can survive time. Law 6. Invest with discipline. Investing is not where you go to become a genius. Investing is where your discipline goes to compound. The SEC's Investor.gov compound interest calculator uses the core variables that matter. Initial investment, monthly contribution, time, estimated interest rate, compounding frequency. Notice what is not there. Hype, ego, prediction addiction, social media certainty, luxury fantasy, screenshot culture. The unsupported man should not gamble with the money that is supposed to buy his freedom. This must be said clearly. A man with no backup cannot treat investing like entertainment. He cannot use rent money to chase a miracle. He cannot call gambling courage. He cannot confuse volatility with opportunity. He cannot confuse luck with intelligence. He cannot confuse a bull market with personal power. A fragile man wants a sudden win because he wants to escape the shame of slow progress. He wants one trade to erase years of inconsistency, one coin to make people respect him, one stock to prove he was right, one risky move to rescue the identity he has not built through discipline. That is not strategy. That is emotional debt looking for a jackpot. Investing must be boring enough to survive your moods. Diversified. Rule-based. Long-term. Automatic where possible. Aligned with your risk tolerance. Protected from your need to feel like a genius. The goal is not to perform intelligence. The goal is to accumulate ownership without destroying yourself. This is hard for the unsupported man because slow progress can feel insulting. He has already waited. He already feels behind. He already sees people his age with better cars, better apartments, better networks, better parents, better timing. So when someone offers him a shortcut, the wounded part of him listens. But understand this. The market is full of people who profit from your impatience. They sell certainty to men who are ashamed of being early. They sell urgency to men who are tired of being invisible. They sell luxury images to men who want proof that the struggle was worth it. They sell identity before the buyer has built structure. That is why discipline matters. Slow progress with control beats fast chaos with no foundation. The unsupported man must build a system he can repeat when he is confident and when he is doubtful, when the market is exciting and when it is boring, when people are praising risk and when everyone is afraid, when he feels behind and when he feels strong. Because the purpose of investing is not to make you feel powerful today. It is to give your future self more options than your present self had. Cash buys time. Skills buy income. Proof buys opportunity. Surplus buys options. Investing buys compounding. But even disciplined investing has a ceiling if your income still depends completely on selling your hours. So the final question is harsher. What do you own that can grow while you are not performing? Law 7. Build owned leverage. The final step is ownership, not just being paid. Owning. A skill can earn. A job can pay. A client can hire. But ownership multiplies. Owned leverage means you control something that can produce value without selling the same hour again and again. An audience, a product, a system, a brand, equity, a process, a reputation, intellectual property, a database, a distribution channel, a business asset, a portfolio of investments. This is the final separation between effort and wealth. The poor man sells effort once. The strategic man turns effort into proof, then proof into income, then income into assets, then assets into options, then options into sovereignty. This is not about becoming lazy. It is about refusing to remain trapped in a model where your entire life must be spent again every morning. Every morning, the man with no leverage wakes up at zero. He must sell the hour again, perform again, convince again, commute again, obey again, absorb pressure again, trade energy for survival again. That model can feed you, but it rarely frees you. Freedom begins when yesterday's work still has value today. A video that keeps bringing attention, a case study that keeps convincing clients, a system that keeps saving time, a product that sells without your constant presence, a reputation that opens doors before you enter the room, an investment that compounds while you sleep, an audience that gives you distribution, a process that lets others produce a result without you touching every detail. That is leverage. And leverage is not magic. Leverage is stored proof connected to distribution. Most men want ownership too early because they want status. They want to say they own a business before they understand value. They want to build a brand before they have a result. They want followers before they have a message. They want scale before they can serve one person well. That is backward. First protect, then earn, then save, then prove, then invest, then own, then scale. Do not skip steps because your ego is embarrassed by the beginning. The beginning is where the foundation is built. Owned leverage without discipline becomes chaos. Owned leverage without proof becomes noise. Owned leverage without surplus becomes stress. Owned leverage without skill becomes performance. Owned leverage without a protected base becomes panic with a logo. This is why the unsupported man must respect sequence. Sequence is mercy for a man with no rescue. Build the base, raise the skill, make the skill visible, turn proof into income, control the surplus, invest with discipline, then build what you own. This is how collapse becomes harder. This is how sovereignty becomes more likely. This is how a man moves from being useful to being difficult to replace. There is a deep identity shift here. So stop saying you have no backup as if it is only a disadvantage. It is also a command. It means you cannot be sloppy, You cannot rely on rescue. You cannot build like a tourist. You cannot make decisions for applause. You cannot waste your evenings and call it recovery. You cannot spend your raise and call it confidence. You cannot hide your skill and call it humility. You cannot avoid selling and call it integrity. You cannot gamble and call it ambition. The unsupported man must become colder than his circumstances. Not cruel, not bitter, colder, more structured, more honest, more difficult to break. Machiavelli was not teaching comfort. He was teaching survival under human pressure. And the law is simple. Fortune favors the man who has prepared control before chaos arrives. So your new identity is not future millionaire. That is too vague, too emotional, too easy to fantasize about. Your identity is builder of control points. Cash buffer, market skill, visible proof, expanded income, protected surplus, disciplined investing, owned leverage. You are not trying to feel rich. You are trying to become harder to control. That is wealth before wealth. That is power before status. That is sovereignty before applause. And now the question is not, do you want to be wealthy? Almost every man says yes to that. The deeper question is, where are you easiest to break? Not where do you feel most inspired. Where are you easiest to break? If one emergency can destroy you, your level is protect. If you cannot earn more, your level is earn. If you earn but cannot keep, your level is save. If no one can see your competence, your level is prove. If you save but do not invest, your level is invest. If you invest but own no leverage, your level is own. If you own something but cannot multiply it, your level is scale. Do not lie to yourself. A man does not rise by flattering his self-image. He rises by finding the weakest control point and fortifying it. This is where the unsupported man becomes dangerous. Not because he is angry. Anger is common. Not because he is alone. Loneliness is common. Not because people doubted him. Doubt is common. He becomes dangerous when he turns every wound into a system. Abandonment becomes discipline. Discipline becomes skill. Skill becomes proof. Proof becomes leverage. Leverage becomes money. Money becomes options. Options become freedom. Freedom becomes self-command. That is the path. No one is coming to build your base. No one is coming to raise your value. No one is coming to make your proof visible. No one is coming to control your surplus. No one is coming to buy your freedom for you. And if that sentence makes you angry, good. But anger is only useful if it becomes architecture. Do not turn this into another video you agree with and forget. Choose the weakest level. Protect, earn, save, prove, invest, own, scale, then act. If you are the man building with no backup, stop mistaking agreement for progress. You already know no one is coming, but your problem is that knowing the truth has not yet become a system. If you keep watching hard truths without building control points, you will become a man with sharper language and the same fragile life. Inside Patreon, you get the deeper, unfiltered frameworks, private doctrines, and practical breakdowns designed to turn isolation into structure, skill, proof, leverage, and financial sovereignty. This is not for men who want to be entertained. It is for men who are ready to become difficult to break. The decision is yours. Now comment your current level. Protect, earn, save, prove, invest, own, or scale. Not the level you wish sounded impressive, the level where you are actually weak. Because the first honest diagnosis is the first act of power. And if your level is proof, study why hard-working men stay invisible. Because effort does not change your life until evidence changes the cost of ignoring you. Build the system. Become the backup. Own the leverage.